Hi everyone! Today I wanted to share with you a book that I'm going to be reading this summer for probably like the fourth time. And it is The Daily 5, Fostering Literacy Independence in the Elementary Grades. And it is by Gail, Boushey, and Joan Moser, who are sisters, and they are actually called The Sisters, in quotes. So this is a book that a friend of mine from college had told me about, I think, close to 5 years ago now. So I went ahead and read it back then, 5 years ago, when she had originally told me all about it and thought it was revolutionary and was absolutely amazed by the program that the sisters had established in the book. And so, of course, I wanted to try it. And I started implementing small pieces of it. And I continued to do that when I changed schools, went on to a different first grade classroom. Finally, this year in the spring, I started using this with my kindergartners. And next year, I plan on a full implementation of the Daily 5 in my kindergarten. I have so many favorite quotes from the book, The Daily 5, and one of my favorite ones is right at the beginning of the first chapter, and it says, "The typical teacher has children doing a lot of stuff. How is what I'm having children do creating readers and writers?" And that's Reggie Routman. And I just feel like, oh my goodness, this is me. Why am I having them do worksheets? Why are they turning in these silly little, cut and paste things from their center times? It's just stuff, and it's just busy work. And I know deeply from what I have been taught in my teacher training, what I have witnessed in my classroom, that is not when children learn how to read and write. They learn how to read and write when they are reading and when they are writing. And so part of why I want to move into the Daily 5 is because it really allows for the time and the structure where real reading and real writing can happen. Research tells us that students who are engaged in meaningful reading experiences and writing experiences have higher levels of reading proficiency at the end of the academic school year. I think that in and of itself says that we need to be doing away with meaningless busy work and really get focused on having students read and write. And in order for students to really read and write in the classroom, I need to have a structure and a procedure set up where they can actually engage in that process. So my goal for reading the Daily 5 is to have students really engage in the reading and writing process, to give me the opportunity to also work with small groups and individuals so that they can have the lessons and the tools and the strategies that they need to become better readers and writers. So this summer I'm doing a reread of the Daily 5, and I'm actually going to be using a study guide, book club type group that I had seen on some teacher blogs last summer. And so I went back and I looked those up, and it was on Tammy's website from Live, Laugh, Love Kindergarten. I think that's what it's called. And she and a group of other bloggers set up a book club for the summer where they were all reading the Daily 5 because they were all either had implemented the Daily 5 or they were about to implement it in their classes in the fall. Because they read this book last summer, all of the other bloggers have already linked up their own blog pages and their own responses to the questions. So I kind of have an advantage that I can read the chapter, I can read everyone else's comments, and then I can come here and share with you my thoughts and kind of integrate it with the thoughts of my colleagues in the blog sphere as well. So I wanted to go ahead and begin with chapter 1, which I reread today for probably like the 10th time, but it's so powerful. And so Tammy had written out some guideline questions, and I have like my little worksheet here that she printed, or she didn't print, she created a PDF for, and I'll put the link in the info bar below so that you can do this as well if you want to start a book study with the Daily 5. But she had some questions for everyone to be thinking about as they were reading chapter 1, the introduction. So number 1 and number 2 are things to think about: teaching and learning new behaviors and expectations to give the students. So teaching and learning new behaviors in the classroom. In the past, I would basically tell students what I wanted to see happen and then expect that to happen. And obviously, after a few years of teaching, realizing that this is not the most effective way for teaching and learning new behaviors. So then we started practicing new behaviors, but we still didn't practice them as much as they probably needed for it to really stick in their muscle memories. So after reading the Daily 5, I realized just how long it takes to implement any sort of new behavior or new change, and how it needs to be modeled over and over again, and how the children need to see both the incorrect model and the correct model so that they establish in their minds, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what it does not look like, and then again, this is what it is supposed to look like in the classroom, whether that's going back to my seat, lining up for the hallway, reading a book, any sort of behavior, any sort of procedure at all. And again, kind of echoing that with the expectation for the student was that if they listened to me and followed my direction, they should be able to do it. If not the first time, then at least the second time. And again, after 7 years of teaching, I know that that just does not always happen. So expectations for the student is that if we practice it enough, if I give them the opportunity to model both the correct behavior and then how to do it, and then the incorrect model, and let them then correct the model again, after practicing that many, many times the first 6 weeks of school, then I should expect to see it established after approximately 6 weeks. So I think I've kind of learned to slow down a bit since I began teaching. The next thing to think about how I have evolved from the beginning of my teaching to now, and after reading the Daily 5, was monitoring student behaviors. How do I monitor the whole group, small group, and individuals? So this is full disclosure. I'm not totally proud of how I manage the class, and I don't necessarily think it's super effective either. I just haven't figured out a better way yet. So sometimes I feel like I'm running a 3-ring circus. I have whole class points that are kind of based on whole brain teaching, where they either earn a mighty oh yeah or an oh no, and that goes along with a smiley face or a frowny face. And so they can learn that when the entire class is doing what they're supposed to do or following directions. I also find myself saying things like, oh, I'm so proud of how quietly you all went back to your seat, or wow, I can tell everyone's working really hard right now. And I'm giving them these compliments, which I think are really important, but at the same time, they're also things that I want them to know is just expected. So I definitely have a little bit of, what's the word? I definitely feel a little bit torn just in the idea of this is what I expect and it has been established in our classroom, and so this is what you are supposed to do and you do it, or encouraging, maybe not rewarding, but just like continuing to encourage behaviors that are correct and that I want to continue to see. The only thing is if you back off on your praise, will then the behavior fall apart too. So I think that's something that I'm going to figure out as I do Daily 5 this coming school year. In terms of the small groups, something that I do is table points, which I think is pretty popular, you know, for the group that gets started most quickly on their math paper, or for a group that lines up at the door quietly. I will say, oh, you guys get a point. I collect points for an entire month. At the end of the month, they get some sort of special prize, usually like an eraser, or I'll let them go to the treasure box and pick a prize out. Sometimes I'll have like a cookie for them. I know sweets aren't necessarily a good thing to provide either. That's mostly just my lack of planning why they get treats instead of like little goodies. Then for individuals, at my school, we have our student learning expectations in the form of an acronym, which is HEART. And so I actually have little paper heart cutouts that when a student is caught doing one of those student learning expectations, whether it's demonstrating healthy character or being an active Christian, then they get a little heart and they get to write their name on it and put it in the heart jar. And each week I pull out a couple names from the heart jar and they get to go to the treasure box. I also do lots of individual praise. I try to correct incorrect behaviors by pointing out people who are doing what they're supposed to do. Like, oh, I love how so-and-so got their pencil out right away. Thank you so much for getting started on that. I love how you're holding your book open so your partner can see it. You know, things like that are ways that I praise and encourage individuals. But then there's also for times when students aren't on task, I use like a color card system. So, you know, green is if you're having a great day, yellow, you've needed some redirection, and red is usually note home. We call those stop and thanks. and we have a red colored paper that has stop and think on it, and then it's like a reflection paper kind of for students to fill out what they did wrong and then how they're going to correct it. And again, it just feels so top down, teacher driven, and I really want to move away from it. So again, monitoring student behaviors, I'm not totally thrilled with how I'm doing it. So I'm hoping through, again, Daily 5, and I'm also reading a couple other books that I will be sharing with you on this channel. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out a better management plan, one that's more effective and that's more child and student driven as opposed to teacher top-down imposed. So the next question to think about was, where is the locus of control? And I kind of spoke about this when I said that the locus of control right now is definitely external. It's me, it's the teacher. And, you know, I've said, you know, I kind of act surprised when I see everyone doing what they're supposed to be doing, or, you know, I say that I'm impressed that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're all focused, working hard. Well, that should just be the everyday. So I'm not sure why I go about doing that, except for obviously that I am kind of surprised when everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So obviously I want to change that more to where everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you know, it's not a less common occurrence. So I like the idea of students having behavior goals and then working in groups to kind of build accountability. Still something that's kind of like floating around up in my head, and I'm going to keep working on and hopefully get some feedback from you all about how I can do that, where students are holding one another accountable for their behaviors and that they can articulate behavior goals and even get feedback from their peers about their behavior goals too. So then next question is, whose classroom is it? And I'd like to say that it's a shared classroom with my students, but really it's a teacher's classroom. And this year, my desk took up way too much space. And I will qualify that it's because somebody put the internet and phone jack in the floor in the middle of the classroom. And so therefore the teacher desk had been placed on top of the phone jack and the internet jack on the floor. But I moved my desk already for next year, and the principal is working out some sort of way to hopefully get it moved or turn it off or run the wire under the carpeting. We're going to figure something out. But I really want the classroom to be a shared community space where students are in charge of keeping it clean. Students are responsible for all of the materials. Materials are shared as well, including the stapler and the tape and the Band-Aids and everything, because most of the time, like, if a kid wants tape anyway, like, I'm like, you know where it is, go get it. And it's on my desk, but it doesn't need to be there. They already know how to use it and they know where it is. And I think as long as I'm explicitly teaching how to use materials at the beginning of the year, that making them shared for everyone, it will actually be really beneficial, and it'll save time for me having to go over and monitor what's happening with the tape or the stapler at my desk. And that kind of leads into the last question, is where are supplies stored in the classroom? And right now the students had, or I should say this past school year, the students had share pockets where they kept toolboxes. And in their toolboxes they had crayons, scissors, glue stick, pencils, eraser, and a grip. And it just seemed, I mean, on the one hand I liked that they had their own materials and they were always there, and they knew kind of where things were if they got lost too. We had like a lost and found crayon box and scissor box and glue sticks and place for erasers. But I think sharing materials on top of the desks so that students are able to move more easily from one workspace to another in the classroom and having less permanent seating, again, will be beneficial with the whole Daily 5 rotations. I think my to-do list is going to have to be to create a supply area in the classroom where students can restock their pencils and their crayons and their erasers for their table caddies, and also where I can then put glue and tape and stapler and staples and kind of teacher supplies as well, so that it's all shared materials. And I also need to go shopping for those kind of caddies that will go in the middle of the tables, that will hold their pencils and their scissors and crayons and all that kind of thing. I also want to find a book called A Children's Book About Tattling. It's a Help Me Be Good book, and I think I saw this on somebody else's blog. I forget whose right now, sorry. And it just helps establish behaviors for the beginning of the year when you're setting up the Daily 5. And I think I'm pretty sure I already have at least a few of these in my classroom. But those are a couple things that I know that I want to purchase or find before I go back to school in the fall, so that it'll be easier to set up the Daily 5. Well, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in today to hear all about the Daily 5. I'm excited to continue this book study, and so I'm going to be doing a whole series for each chapter, answering the questions as they were outlined in last summer's book study blog group, and I will link it all below so that if you want to join in, you can post a response on your blog, or if you make videos, you could post a video response as well. All right, see you next time. Bye.